He's being a pain. Crowley! No! Crowley! Hey, it's Em! And no one is more shocked than me to be able to say that I actually read a couple of books. Finally finished a couple. So we're going to talk about that today. The first book that I read was Surrender, 40 Songs, One Story by U2 lead singer Bono. I saw this book at the library and picked it up on a whim. I'm not some big U2 fan. I'm familiar with their major radio hits and I like those, but I've never bought a U2 CD. I did go see them in concert in 2005. My husband, when I met him, he was a U2 fan, is I assume still a U2 fan. But so he had the CDs, and in 2005 I think it was one of the first concerts I went to knowing I was pregnant. But yeah, anyway, that's kind of the extent of my relationship with the music or the band. So I'm not really sure what made me pick up the book, except that I was kind of oh, that's interesting. 40 songs, one story. I don't know. It was gimmicky enough that I was curious. I went through a phase back in high school where I was really interested in Rolling Stone magazine and band interviews and things like that. And this kind of fed that, I guess, interest. So I picked it up, took it with me on vacation, didn't open it at all. Got back from vacation, thought, you know what, I'm probably just going to have to return this. I'm not even going to read it. But then I was like, okay, well, let me just glance at the first page. And then I read the first page or two and I was like, oh shit, I'm going to have to read this now, aren't I? Because I did get sucked in. I enjoyed it. It starts roughly with Bono's mother dying when he was 14, and he talks about his nickname. His real name is Paul Hewson. And it's each chapter has a little bit of artwork by him, and each chapter is a song title or lyric, I think. And though it goes chronologically more or less from forming the band and their first successes and getting a manager and things like that, each chapter in itself is a little bit, it's like a lot of little vignettes. It's very impressionistic is really the whole thing that I got from it, was that it's, it's kind of these brush strokes that you can look at on their own and kind of admire the way they're done, and then when you step back, there is still a cohesive picture, I guess. But anyway, I did enjoy it. I gave it a 4.2, I'd say. If you have any interest, he talks about his faith. He talks about, his deep feelings for, his, what's the word? Philanthropy or, but yeah, I thought it was well written and a fairly quick read because it's kind of written in these vignette kind of bits and pieces. There are very few sections that I found long-winded. I think anyone who's a creator, anyone who, is creative in some way can identify with a lot of the feelings that he discusses having about the work. And, anyway, yeah, I liked it. If you're interested in that kind of thing. And like I said, even as someone who's not some huge fan of U2, I was able to enjoy it. Maybe because I am also a writer, so the creativity angle was interesting to me. Okay, so the next book I read, I received an ARC for Starseer by Katya Hernández. This is a young adult fantasy novel I thought it was going to be, because of the title, I thought it was going to be like a space opera kind of thing, but it's not that. It takes place in a world, so, and there's a pronunciation guide for the character names, but I'm still going to butcher them, I'm almost positive, so I apologize. But the main character, his name is Itar. Every time I say it, I think of how some people say guitar instead of guitar. And I'm just like, because I want to say Atar, but that's because I grew up watching Young Sherlock Holmes. Anyway, Itar. He's 15. He's the nephew of King Theobald. He knows he's a Starseer, but feels like his magic is actually very weak. He can't really master it, and there's not very much of it. A Starseer is someone who can communicate with the stars and get visions of the future, I guess. And anyway, he feels unloved by his uncle. He's got a cousin named Friedrich. They call him Fried, although spelled it looks like fried. Who likes to bully and beat him up and stuff. But he the country they live in, Scotland, is an island nation, and it doesn't there's not much industry. It's pretty impoverished. The castle's falling apart. Theobald gave me like Haggard vibes from Last Unicorn a little bit. And anyway, but there's a threat of this kind of other country called Gleesum. The Gleesmen are kind of going island to island, raiding the islands, taking over something. But there's kind of also this sense that there's nothing on Scotland that these guys would possibly want, because they don't know that there's a Starseer, which is a very valuable person to have. In any case, this all gets kind of upended when it gets complicated. Basically, there's a servant boy named Hans who rescues Itar from his cousin, and it turns out Hans works for an alchemist named Aed, who's been looking for Itar, and Aed can he can go through portals. He's got like some kind of time. Anyway, he wants to mentor Itar and teach him how to use his powers, and it's a cute story. Because Itar is so sheltered, he's 15 and he's really sheltered, so he reads very young. And then, since readers tend to read up, like age-wise, this is billed as young adult, but I really think it's more like upper middle grade, lower YA, because I could see a 12 or 13-year-old reading this. There are a few little things like there were some turns of phrase that were a little strange. There were a couple of typos. The editor in me, was going, I want to fix that. But there was this one thing where characters hum, not musically, but in response to being asked a question, which I think the author means like if somebody asks you something, you go, like you're either stalling for time or trying to decide on the answer, or, taking a moment to think, and you kind of make that noise. I think that's what was meant here. But it happens so frequently that it became very noticeable. Oh, he hummed, she hummed, they hummed. Yeah, well, no, not they, but he or she always hummed. I did it. I hummed. There is a budding relationship between Hans and Itar that's pretty cute and sweet. There's a lot of good action. I overall really enjoyed the book. I gave it like a 4.4, stars, I think. And I get the sense it's the first in a series, that there's like more coming. It is my favorite character, but I always go for the reticent, aloof types. So the alchemist, I found him like way more fun and interesting than anybody else in this story. I was curious. This is so Hans is blonde, and when he shows up in Scotland, it's very clear he's foreign. But then when Aed shows up and he's got dark hair, darker features, they're like, oh, he's very foreign. And I'm like, what do the people of Scotland look like? Blonde people are foreign, and dark-haired people are foreign. Are they all redheads? What's happening? There were also some, like I said, some word choice things. The king refers to Itara as kid, and that felt very modern Earth culture-esque. Like, he doesn't say child, like you would expect in a fantasy novel. And I don't read a ton of fantasy, so maybe I'm wrong. But like when you're talking about, like, usually there's some kind of elevated language in the way they speak. Especially since this is a pre-technical kind of society. The Gleeson have steamships, like they're kind of a steampunk, I think, and they've got pistols. But the people of Scotland, the soldiers just have swords. They are not as advanced, or at least don't have the resources to get their hands on that technology. So when you think about the way they speak, when you hear kid, I don't know, it just felt very jolting to me. These are all nitpicky, though. These are all nitpicky because overall the story hangs together very well. It moves at a good pace. And so, like, all of the little things were the things that, like, kind of distracted me because, overall, it's actually a very good book. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed kind of the cast of characters that is created in this book. There is the female captain of the guards. She's her name is, I think the Crowley. Okay, where was I? Cat is gonna be obnoxious, apparently. Theobald has a female captain of his guard. Her name is, I think the pronunciation guide said Jowson, but it's often shortened to J-O. So I don't know if you would say Jow or you would say Joe. But she has a love interest named Rowan, who's often shortened to Row, R-O-W. So then it's like Joe and Row? I don't know. I'm making up rhymes over here. But, oh, Crowley. Nice. Yeah, everybody wants to see that. It's just, no, you don't want to see all that either. Huh? I apologize for my cat's display. Let's just put an end to it. This is it's a cute book. I'm not convinced it's like, why I feel like it's something where the characters will age. Well, I mean, Itar and Hans will like become more sophisticated as they age, ideally, because they read kind of young. But that's why I think younger readers would read it, but then maybe age up with the characters. But it's, it's well written and overall like a fun, quick read, fast paced. Yeah. Like I said, I gave it 4.4 stars. And that's what I've read. I picked up a couple more library books. I picked up Home Before Dark by Riley Sager because I've never read a Riley Sager, and I've obviously heard of Riley Sager. And that's the only book by Riley Sager that's ever had a plot that interests me. So I just started that last night, And I picked up The Beautiful Ones by Silvia Moreno Garcia. Is that her name? Again, I've never read anything by her. I hear a lot about her work. This one sounded interesting to me, so I grabbed that. I am still gonna work on The Queen of the Damned, and I am reading The Tower of Nero to finish out the Trials of Apollo, that Rick Riordan series, speaking of middle grade. So that's everything I'm reading right now, and also trying to get, my writing done. The latest Drew and Ray's did come out last week, so if you're interested in that as a little pre-summer treat, because it is a summer story, and it features, candy and lakeside shenanigans, but, go and enjoy that. And yeah, that's where we are for now with everything that's going on. Thanks for being here. Let me know if you've read these or if either of these titles interest you. They're two very different things. This was only the second nonfiction book I had read, the Bono one, which is surprising because I do actually tend to read more nonfiction. But I'm also just way behind on reading in general this year. I think I've read 10 books in not quite 4 months. That's pretty bad for me. But I need to update my bingo board, so I will probably do that, and I usually post that update on my Twitter, so if you want to come find me, I will put the Twitter link in the description, but also over here on the screen somewhere, so you can find me on Twitter. And that's it. Take care.